Hello, everyone, and welcome to Open, the one and only show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world right to you. I'm your host, Daren Jaime. Today, we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough and New York City. Coming up on today's show, we go front and center learning about a not-for-profit health plan that's specializing in providing comprehensive health coverage and coordinated care to New Yorkers with complex conditions. Then afterwards, we'll discuss the partnership between New York Blood Center and Feeding New York State that's helping communities who are still suffering the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Then a little later on in the show, we'll talk with the Chief Executive Officer at Homeward NYC. We'll talk about how they're providing housing services to homeless young mothers, LGBTQ young people, as well as older adults. And then finally, we'll discuss the homeless LGBTQ plus youth crisis that's in New York City and how one organization is helping to provide meeting their needs. So we've got a very interesting show coming up for you. We want you to stay with us because Open begins right now. And welcome back. Homeward NYC provides transitional housing for homeless young mothers and their children, non-time limited affordable housing for LGBTQ young adults, and long-term affordable housing for low-income and homeless seniors. Now, they believe by obtaining housing first, homeless New Yorkers can find the stability that's necessary to address trauma, as well as build the skills that they need as they transition into the next phase of their life. Here now, sharing more details, we've got the Chief Executive Officer at Homeward NYC, Jeannette K. Ruffins. And Jeannette, good to have you. And as we talk about this work here, really providing a much-needed service, because when we talk about homeless New Yorkers, that number continues to rise. But then you've got a really target group that you're really working with as well.
Yeah, so actually, we serve three very different populations, right? So we serve homeless young mothers. They come in between the ages of 18 and 24, and they have children usually under the age of 6. And for many of them, and this is shelter, transitional housing, right? And so our expectation is that they come in, we help them stabilize, address their immediate needs, right? Make sure they have clothing, food, are connected to health care, that their children are in care, have seen a doctor lately, take care of those things. And then kind of what do they need to transition to permanent housing, right? And so for many of our young mothers, they left with kind of acrimonious separations between their nuclear family. So it is an opportunity for them while they're on their own to maybe mend some of that. It's a chance for them to talk about what they want for their future, although in transitional housing, it usually just starts them on that path, right? It is kind of, are you thinking about school? Where do you see yourself in 3 years? And then what skills do you need when we move you into permanent housing to hold on to it? Because many of them have not had their own apartment. And so I think things like budgeting, most of them are on, if not very low income, fixed incomes, right? And actually, I have to say, I have found people on fixed income can budget better than many of us who have a lot more money, right? Because they have less money to do it with. But now they have a child, and they have to consider the needs of that child in there. So we help them with that. Many of them have experienced trauma. Many of them have not been in healthy relationships before that. So there is some conversation about what that is, what you want for yourself. How do you keep yourself safe? How do you negotiate a healthy relationship with your partner? Because many of them have them, even when they're not living with them in the transitional housing. And then what do you need? What are your top priorities as you're here for 9 to 12 months? What are your top priorities, and what can we do to help you move forward and be stable? Because for many young women, this is a cycle of homelessness. Many of our young families have been homeless already and have been homeless as children. That building is an intergenerational building. It actually shares space with seniors. So for our seniors, and a significant portion of our seniors are also coming out of homelessness. And so we know that homeless seniors have health issues almost it's like if you're in your 60s, you have health issues of somebody who's almost 20 years older than you, right? Mainly because you've been homeless and you haven't had a chance to address your health care. So that's an opportunity. That's one of our primary concerns is making sure you have stable, your health care is stable, that you're connected to a primary care physician, that you're no longer running in and out of urgent care and emergency rooms. And then trying to create a community for our seniors, right? Trying to make sure that they are going to a senior center or reconnecting with people that maybe they lost connections with while they were in shelter and had to move around so that they have a support system. Talk a lot about nutrition. We talk a lot about even mental health. Many people have come into shelter with a level of depression and anxiety. So we have staff that works with them to help that. And then they too are kind of how to manage on a fixed income to be as healthy and as happy. And for us, we really do want people to age in place. So it's really trying to figure out what are the support systems that would allow you to do that. Now
Yeah.
we've been around since 1989, and we started with the intergenerational site. And the other thing about having the intergenerational site before I moved to the other population is that, the interaction between the seniors and the young mothers are helpful for both of them. It keeps seniors young to be around young people. And then I also think for some of our young mothers who have who do not have the best relationship with their families, it's nice to have an older adult kind of just giving you advice, even though, as all young adults, sometimes they don't want to listen to it, right?
Yeah.
But it is good to see other people have experience. And then our other population is we serve LGBTQ young adults. So
I'm sorry, I didn't want to cut you off, but I wanted to talk to you about that because when you talk about serving LGBTQ adults, this is the latest initiative that I know that you have because I know that you're managing 3 sites and you've got the
Right.
Bronx, and then you've also got Harlem as well, and your LGBTQ community that you're serving right now is the most recent. Am I correct?
Right. So that's happened. So we had the seniors and the young adults and the young mothers for a really long time. In about 2011, we opened our first site, our permanent housing site for LGBTQ young adults. Partly because if you think about 7% of the population in the U.S. identifies as LGBTQ, about 40% of homeless youth identify as LGBTQ. So they are disproportionately represented in the homeless population. And so we really felt that they needed a longer time than shelter or transitional housing to really heal and address their issues. Now, for some of our population, they do come in with diagnosed mental illness and active substance use, but it really is a place to heal. I mean, these young adults in particular really have had oftentimes really traumatic separations from their family due to uh, not accepting their sexual identity or their gender identity, and so and they've also LGBTQ young adults tend to have been homeless longer than their peers. So anyway, so we call it non-time limited. It's permanent. They have a lease. They have their own studio apartment. But I mean, obviously, I don't want the average age of my young adult program to be 40. So it is an expectation that they are going to be moving on, and we help them too. I mean, this is often their first apartment also. They've never lived by themselves, so we're trying to create a community of support around them. We do life skills, budgeting, help them with build their credit, talk about credit. What do they want to do? Go back to school, start school. Many of them are working part time. So we have conversations about, is this, sometimes it's just a job, but sometimes it could be, if you're in a different job, it could be a path to an actual career. So we work with them about that. Um, and generally, it's really kind of a community of healing because most of them come with pretty rough lives.
And when we talk about rough lives, I know that behavioral health is among the things that people are dealing with and contending with. And we see a rise in mental illness, we see a rise in substance abuse, and yet and still the services aren't always there as much as we like to see them. I know that you're doing a great job in terms of impacting people in the area of behavioral health. Talk about the wraparound that you provide through behavioral health.
Right. So every site has a clinician who does an assessment. I mean, obviously, so first of all, services are voluntary. So even though we know that people come in with those issues, so we have to be the most engaging social workers that I've ever worked with, right? Because it is voluntary. And so part of it is developing a relationship. So we also use a harm reduction model, which means that you can come in actively using, you can continue to use while you're there. It's our job to help you see the harm that your use or non-compliance with your mental health is how it's interfering with your goals that you've set for yourself. So if you tell me, I want to be a nurse, and I'm saying, okay, but you're getting high every day, it is unlikely that you will be successful in that program, right? If you're not paying your rent or if you don't have food, I take that as an opportunity to reflect to you that your substance use is getting in the way of things that you have identified as your own goals, not my goals, your goals for yourself. And then I think it's the same thing with kind of compliance with mental health. I mean, some people are just anxious or depressed, and I don't say just, very serious. We do have people who have more intensive mental health issues. But if they are on the medication, stick to the regime, they can accomplish what they want to accomplish. And so our goal is to show them where their non-compliance with certain things interfere with the things that they want to do in their future.
Well, I want to ask this because you talked about somebody who does have substance abuse may be allowed to still be in the home, right? Now, balance that out because there's some people who are watching and saying, well, that seems kind of uncommon because if you have somebody that's substance abusing and they're living in a house, it could be disruptive to the house. It could be disruptive to residents. How do you counter that given the fact that you may have somebody that may be in the area of substance abuse and then somebody who may not?
Right. So what I say is it's not your use that is going to put you at risk of losing your housing. It is your behavior, right? So it is not the fact that you are using drugs. It's the fact that when you use drugs, you may be banging on other people's doors or loud or whatever, right? So what I have to say to you, I have to separate out the fact that you're using a substance from your behavior under the influence. And yes, it is true. I mean, I would love to say that we've never had to ask somebody to leave or help them move on, or sometimes obviously move them into a substance abuse treatment program. But if every time, I don't know if you know a lot about addiction, but it's a cycle, right? And so if every time somebody uses, I throw you out, how is that helpful? Right? I have to allow you an opportunity. In fact, people found that as long as you can stay in a program, your relapse is a lot likely to be shorter. If I put you out and make you homeless again, then what might have been a 3 day relapse will become a 6 month or a 7 month relapse because you're back on the street. So that's not my goal. My goal is to help you be as safe as you can. I mean, obviously, I won't say it never gets to the point that people have to be asked, but for the most part, we can work with you, and the community understands that we use a harm reduction model. It is not our goal to make people homeless again.
Yeah. Jeannette, great explanation and great work that you're doing, and we want to thank you for being with us. Jeannette K. Ruffins, who's the CEO of Homeward NYC. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
All righty. Well, we want to let our viewers know, listen, if you want more information, all you got to do is visit their website. The website is homeward.nyc. We encourage you to stay with us. We've got more show. Open continues coming up.